Okay, let's not spill the tea. Maybe people come to this channel for that sort of thing. So, yeah, a while ago, this channel passed by about 5,000 subscribers, which, that's a nice little solid milestone to pass by. I don't want to necessarily do the thing that people do where they say like, oh, I couldn't have done it without you. I love each and every single one of my subscribers. Please feed the parasocial interaction. That's something that I've actively tried to distance myself as a creator in the now 4 years that I have been on this platform. But all snarkiness and anxiety aside, I am genuinely grateful that anyone gives any of the work that I do on the internet the time of day. Be it from my video essays to my work on the Pink Isle, the fact that I released a tabletop RPG this year and people have paid money for it. It's been very gratifying and also a little bit, wild. I think the way my brain works, I tend to not think about it that way. There's always that sense of wanting more that being on this platform tends to incentivize. Almost as if it's not a very good website. So, we're gonna do a thing. We're gonna do a thing that people do when they hit arbitrary milestones on this website, and I'm gonna answer a couple of your questions. So, some of these questions I took from my Twitter, some of them from the YouTube community comments, some of them from some pals on Discord and such. Before I get to that though, I figure I might as well get the requisite sort of questions that I'm sure some of you guys want to know. So if you somehow didn't know already, hi, my name's Henry, he, him pronouns, I'm cis het, so sorry, nobody's perfect. Favorite pieces of media? If I don't include anything, I'll just pop them up right here, but some favorite movies: Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Princess Mononoke, Batman Mask of the Phantasm, WALL-E, mostly animated stuff if you can't tell. Favorite TV shows: The Twilight Zone, Steven Universe, Infinity Train, Over the Garden Wall. It's getting up there, but The Owl House is a more recent addition. Pushing Daisies is definitely an all-timer for me. Favorite video games, Mario Galaxy, Pokemon Mystery Dungeons, the most underrated Nintendo title of all time, Nintendo Land. Anyone who has a Wii U, you know what's up. Some podcasts, I'm a fan of McElroy stuff, if my videos wasn't an indication. I like me some Critical Role. I'm a really big fan of the Bad Romance podcast, so being able to talk and meet with them this past year has been a highlight, certainly. But also, stuff like Behind the Bastards is also a nice big pick. Books and comics, well, if you look at my bookshelf, you can see a lot of my general book choices here, including some stuff that might be featured in an upcoming video. But generally speaking, I'm a big fan of some stories like Anya's Ghost, Jeff Smith's Bone, Calvin and Hobbes. A lot of comics is where I tend to go to as well. And then some music, including some stuff that you might be hearing in the background. I'm really into pop music, your Carly Rae Jepsons, your Janelle Monáes. I'm also just really into that weird internet cover stuff, so I was binging Insane in the Rain's compilation album of all of Pokemon Pearl. Let's put all that aside. Let's get to those actual questions now, shall we? Starting with a question from Kayleen Knapp. Now, Kayleen recently did a bunch of amazing artwork of me, which the fact that I'm also getting fan art for myself is absolutely buck wild. But she asks, what are your favorite other essayists that you watch or listen to? It can be absolutely ones who inspired your style, or it can be one that has nothing like you or something you just enjoy. I feel like you would enjoy Toonrific Tariq if you haven't already seen his stuff. To start off, yes, I have seen Toonrific Tariq. His stuff is very good. Honestly, like his Peanuts compilation stuff that that he's doing right now, S tier stuff. One of the best people making videos on animated stuff on YouTube, IMO. Good shit. In terms of other video makers that I especially like, you can actually see a pretty comprehensive list of my favorite channels on my YouTube channel, where you can pretty easily find them in a list. I feel like most people in the field of video essays, you know, there's the usual staple of people that have been, at least to some degree, a bit of an inspiration. Also, there's been certain creators who have been a certain shadow in one's past that, like it or not, they have an influence. But at least in terms of creators that I am especially a big fan of, that I highly recommend anyone checking out, are shockingly some people who I've actually gotten to meet and collaborate with over the past couple of years, which is absolutely wild. But yeah, some people I am really big fans of include Sarah Zedig of Let's Talk About Stuff, Laura Crone, Draw Opinion Dumps, Kyle Calgren of Brows Held High. Further along from there, a lot of other creators who, if you've seen my work, you could probably detect a couple of parallels in terms of some of the stuff that I do. One smaller channel that I really recommend if you're a fan of the stuff I do is Transparency. If you've enjoyed my Moomin video, for example, they did a very fascinating essay discussing the Finno-Swede dialect that is present in most of Tove Jansson's writing, and there just is so much stuff that they've done in terms of Moomin history that I am very, very impressed by it. But in addition to that, you know, some of my other big favorites include people like Ian Danskin of Innuendo Studios, Abigail Thorne of Philosophy Tube, George Weidman of Super Bunny Hop, as well as Maggie Mayfish. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of people I'm forgetting, so I'm gonna we're just gonna pop a list here for just any other people that I might want to include. But generally speaking, I feel like the sort of channels that I end up gravitating towards are people that can take a very intersectional approach to the media that they're discussing. People like Noah Caldwell Gervais, who, despite the fact that they make incredibly long videos, they are able to connect the concepts that are being discussed in these video games to wider concepts throughout their own history as well as the history of the world. And that's the sort of thing that I at least try to attempt to incorporate into my videos. All these people, like, comment, hit the bell. Ugh. Apologies for asking a question unrelated to your channel, but I just got back from watching a video about soda. What is your favorite soda and flavor, and why? I appreciate the video essays you put out. And this is from Tessman Abbas. Now, this is where we're gonna get spicy. Yeah, we're gonna get the hot takes out. All the tea is gonna be spilled in this video because, shocker, I think soda sucks. Yeah, this has been one of those weird things for myself for most of my life, but fun fact, carbonation just doesn't agree with me. Not even in like a digestive sense, but like as a kid, whenever I would try soda, I would just complain about how it would hurt my mouth and how the carbonation would just sting, and as a result, just never got into soda. And I think that has been probably for the best. Although once I discovered tea and the amount of sugar that I put in it, much of the damage that was mitigated from me not drinking sodas was immediately just chucked out the window with tea. But if I had to prefer a tea, my go-tos are black teas. The big ones for me are a nice Irish breakfast tea, something nice and bitter and strong, or, as I've recently been messing with, is malasada chai, which a little scoop of the stuff just makes this very spicy beverage that, no matter the time of day, no matter like any of that, I will just nicely drink it. What is your opinion on Tom Nook? And this is from Schwarmy. Okay, so anyone who has tuned into my wedding stream on Animal Crossing knows that I've spent a long time on all of my Animal Crossing towns. Here's the dream address if you wanted to see that for some reason. But my opinion on Tom Nook has greatly evolved over the years, and it has evolved in tandem with my evolving political ideologies, which is just... In the past, I was more inclined to thinking about how, like, maybe people are being a little bit too harsh on Tom Nook. You know, he's got his 2 adopted kids that he's taking care of. He's, like, given a home at a pretty reasonable rate, and there isn't deadlines for any of that sort of stuff. Which, on one hand, I think, depending on your perspective on how you think housing should be handled, a lot of people would be inclined to thinking, oh, that's pretty reasonable. Though, if the past year hasn't been any indication, we have greatly seen how housing as a commodity is something that people needlessly hoard, and the notion of houselessness is something that is artificially created, and there is absolutely no reason for that. And my disdain for the real estate market and landlords and stuff, let's say I'm not a fan. But when put within the context of Animal Crossing, though, this is the dilemma. When put within the game mechanics of this story, he serves a function. It's a means of progression of being able to overcome adversity and to gain a sense of independence. That said, something that greatly helps New Horizons as a piece of art is by setting it on a deserted island and positioning Tom Nook as more of a travel agent and someone who is actively taking the infrastructure and managing it. That definitely gets rid of some of the crappy landlord vibes. That said, when it gets to the point where he runs both the shop and the housing market, it seems like a little bit of a monopoly, but like call me crazy, but perhaps the person who controls the wealth of an environment shouldn't be someone who needs to manage the living conditions of the people around them just by the merit of them, like, having the money. I don't know, this isn't a very nuanced take about it. Other people have made essays about the capitalist ideologies that can be found within the Animal Crossing, but to put it simply, he's fine, but he should pay for more of the public works projects. Another question from Schwarmy. What was your favorite fun fact or tangent that you wanted to include in one of your videos but had to take out for whatever reason? This may be a little bit of a cop-out, but surprisingly enough, I tend to not have a lot of weird tangents that I cut out of my videos. This is mostly based on the metric of how my brain works and how I tend to classify everything of the utmost importance whenever I'm telling something. ADHD, man, what are you gonna do? That said, I've had a lot of different video ideas over the years of me doing this, and for whatever reason, they haven't been able to manifest yet. If you want me to actually do one of these videos, let me know. We can see what my take is, but as it stands, there have been at least 2 attempts at me making a video talking about The Greatest Showman. That movie shall be my white whale. I've tried writing about the Watchmen comics, but then the HBO series came out, and then suddenly everyone had their own Watchmen take, and I just didn't want to touch that. I've tried to do a couple of things relating to Pokemon in the past, specifically the anime, and I've had my share of hot takes, but again, things haven't manifested with that. Maybe in another day, maybe in another life, I'll be able to get back to those things. But, you know, as it stands, sometimes your most basic take tends to escape you. What was the most surprising thing you learned about the Barbie movies or from the Barbie movies from your podcast? Thank you, Kayleen Knapp. This is in reference to The Pink Aisle, which you can listen to on all of your favorite podcast platforms. If I had to name one thing that would surprise me, I think it's the buck wild stuff that relates to the lawsuits going on between MCA Entertainment and Mattel. For those of you guys who don't know, MCA is the company that produces the Bratz dolls and Lil Surprise, as well as a couple of other doll lines who have mainly been a market competitor to Barbie for the past 25 years. Now let me just say up front, both of these companies suck, but when you dig deep into some of the business practices that MCA has employed, it is quite shocking how shady they can sometimes be when it comes to the sort of competitive business that these two rivals seem to be stuck in until the end of time. In regards to the Barbie movie specifically, I think the most surprising thing to me still has to be just how absolutely gay Barbie and the Diamond Castle is. When I watched that movie for the first time nearly 2 years ago, the moment I saw Barbie and her friend living in a cottage in the woods, surrounded by just a beautiful field of flowers where they sing a song called Two Voices, One Song, and just talk about how much they care about each other. The fact that more people haven't discovered just this unadulterated queer story it's astonishing. But yeah, no, Diamond Castle's still definitely one of the best ones. Go watch it. I've heard a lot of YouTubers say they feel like a lump while spending multiple days editing their videos. Do you feel like that? Is there anything you do to treat yourself while you slog on through? Or are there ways you make editing more stimulating to avoid that lump-like feeling? As someone with ADHD, I deal with executive dysfunction sometimes, where I think about just all the tasks that I have going through, and I spend a lot of mental energy trying to order out which task to do in which order in order to properly get into that right headspace. I've heard many people describe executive dysfunction as being like a bricklayer that has to climb a mountain before you can lay the bricks. For some people, the bricklaying is the most difficult part and the most arduous stuff, but oftentimes once I get to the editing stage, I'm just like, yes, I know what to do here. I'm a focus in on this and I can do what I can. And oftentimes, by the time I get to the editing stage, I've spent so much time just tweaking and going through filming and writing and all of this other development stuff that this home stretch ends up feeling a lot more easy. That said, something that has made at least my experience video editing a lot more easy is just thinking about different ways that I can experiment with the craft and ways that I can try and do certain things to make this video a little bit different. If you've noticed, I've been experimenting with a lot of stuff with After Effects in some of my more recent videos, and have done a bunch of different weird things. And I think because of that, editing becomes one of those things that feels a little bit more intuitive and natural, and ones that feels a little bit less like a chore, which you should try to strive for with any type of art that you do. Let's see, who's next? Friend of the show, Draw Opinion Dumps asks me, if you could make a video that would be a guaranteed hit, no matter how long it is or no matter how niche the subject matter it is, what would you make a video about? And I gotta be honest, this was initially a difficult question to answer because, I don't exactly try to limit myself in terms of the subject matter. I just talk about the things that interest me. That said, if I wanted it to be a guaranteed hit, I would absolutely love nothing more than to talk about a movie that is very near and dear to my heart. I am, of course, referring to the 1998 cinematic classic, Mom's Out of Sight. This is an interesting movie. It's bad. It's just one of those really crappy 90s movies meant to be this inoffensive, family-friendly story about a mom that turns invisible due to some wacky science fiction experiment. But, dear viewer, believe me when I tell you that the decisions and the plot of this movie and the acting within it is something that has utterly fascinated myself for many, many years. This was probably the first time I really appreciated the concept of watching and making fun of a bad movie. Like as a young kid, I think I was like maybe in middle school or something. I just remember watching this DVD to see what the heck it was with my siblings and us just having a very good time watching it. And to this day, I will still want to watch this anytime there is a bad movie night, no matter how many times my friends or my family do not want it. I don't know what it is about this movie that fascinates me so much. I don't know why I like thinking about it, but boy howdy, I would love to talk about this movie. And it's an especially big shame considering that this movie was taken down of pretty much most streaming services. It used to be free on Amazon Prime, but then Jeff Bezos decided to take it off of his prestigious streaming service. I guess he didn't want it to share website space with other cinematic classics like Sorceress or Space Truckers or Tarzan in Manhattan. You know, because all that Amazon money is just definitely going into quality assurance. But yeah, no. Mom's Out of Sight. I don't know. We'll make this a 20 patron goal or something on Patreon. If you want me to see why I like Mom's Out of Sight so much, patreon.com/Henry Kathman. Marketing. In preparing to DM your Infinity Train tabletop RPG, what is the oddest or best piece of world building or lore-based rule that you found and have to follow from the show? When it comes to most pieces of media, lore is one of those things that I kinda don't care too much about following to a T, because ultimately, lore is certain arbitrary rules that an author has set for a world that, while it can contextualize a work, it doesn't necessarily imbue it with an inherent meaning outside of its core themes and tones or ideas that it's already wrestling with. Generally, lore to me is something that can enhance something, but when it comes in service of telling a story, that's when it becomes interesting. And in the case of something like Infinity Train, part of the reason why I wanted to make a tabletop RPG of this show in the first place is because the setting by itself already lends itself to this wide and diverse set of settings and scenarios that you could potentially put a player into. And half of the fun is just being able to devise some strange thing that, by probability standards, has to statistically be somewhere on a infinite train, right? When I was designing this RPG, there was a less of a rule and more of a guideline that I tried to keep in mind as I started to get into the final stages of this RPG. So for those of you guys who don't know, the whole point of the Infinity Train is to take people in the real world and try to get them to solve their problems. Now, this on its face, it's fine. Though when you place this in the control of player characters, some interesting side effects that you deal with is that by the necessity of role-playing, every character is going to imbue some part of their personality and their history and their ideas into their own character. No matter what type of character you play in an RPG, some elements are gonna seep in through. That's just part of the fun of a tabletop game. When you put that in the setting of a train designed to solve a problem that a character has with themselves or with their personality, one of the things that I realized very early on is that this game ran the risk of acting as potential therapy or life advice to other players. I have a very distinct memory of one of my playtesters coming forward to me with a character who, without going into details, had a very specific real-life problem that, while it is something that a character in the show would certainly deal with, as the conductor or game master of this game, I would not be in a qualified place to give good advice with that sort of stuff. And as a result, this led me to creating more of a framework for people to imbue like some pre-made flaws or some pre-made issues that a character is trying to overcome. This way, a game master could hopefully be able to make the character or the passenger in the story solve a problem without it veering into giving therapy without, accreditation, because boy howdy, y'all, if you end up in a tabletop group where your GM is becoming your therapist, that ain't it, sis. You need to roll an athletics check and get the fuck out of there. Definitely an interesting intersection of theme and system when it came to adapting a pre-existing work into an RPG rule system. So yeah, interesting question. What's the most unexpected thing you've learned from making videos / watching audiences' reaction to them? Have you learned anything that helps part of your life that are not online? Now, when it comes to this kind of stuff, I'm very lucky in that because I have a very small audience, much of the reaction to my work is very civil, very good, and overall exceptionally positive. Honestly, the most negative feedback I've ever gotten on that is when chuds watch my Brooklyn Nine-Nine video and get really, really salty that I think, hey, maybe this cop show shouldn't be so irresponsible. But I think something that I've tried to internalize as much as I can is that you can spend so much time doing research and trying to make yourself an expert on the topics that you are going into, but you're still going to get things wrong, and there are going to be people that will know way more about this stuff than you do. And as a result, when I've gotten things wrong, I try to be pretty receptive to that sort of stuff as best as I can. I think for someone like me as a cis white het dude, society tends to condition people like me into thinking we're right no matter what, and that ain't the case all the time. If there was one other lesson that at least my time on the internet has taught me, is that this is not real life. The sort of drama and discourse and the stress that sometimes I deal with as a merit of being a person online and being a person in the periphery of all sorts of internet drama, it is always important to remember that, this discourse that's surrounding online person A or social media trend B, if you were to ask an average person, most people thankfully have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. If I approached a person talking about freaking Doug Walker, most people will say, who? Whenever you're dealing with any sort of internet discourse and stuff, it's always good to take a step back and think does this actually matter? does this actually materially affect the real world in a overtly bad way? So, just something to think about. But yeah, those are some of my questions, so thank you everyone who sent them my way, and thanks to everyone that has watched my bullshit over the past 4 years, and yeah, we'll see what sort of other exciting stuff I have going on next. Just to give you guys a little idea of some stuff down the pipeline, you're going to be seeing some more Infinity Train RPG stuff. Pink Isle's still going pretty strong. We got some more guests on the horizon. More video essays are coming, but as of late, I've been trying not to push myself too hard with that stuff. There may be some ideas down the road that might be featured somewhere in this video. But yeah, I don't know how to end this, so bye!